and welcome to, I suppose, a little look back on the year of 2020, but more of a summary of some of the books that I absolutely adored this year. Now, this is not my top 10 books of the year. This is the 10 books that helped me survive 2020, the books when I look back and feel like they really meant something to me. I have 10 books here, as I've said, and the way I've categorised these is not that they're all my 5-star reads, although most of them are probably 5s. They're not all 5-star reads, but these are books that I have read at a certain point in the year and I thought, yep, I'm going to remember this point and this book. At the time I read it, I'm always going to associate it with this exact thing or this feeling, or it just made me feel. And I feel like these are the books that helped me survive 2020. Not to be dramatic, but I feel like we needed some help with 2020, and yeah, these books really helped. This is in no particular order. I'm just going to grab the books as and when they come to the top of the pile. The first book is Under a Dancing Star by Laura Wood. This is a Much Ado About Nothing retelling that I have had on my shelves for ages and only read this summer. I read this because I wanted something set abroad, something that was sunny and beautiful and that would just take me away. This was lyrical, it was a Shakespeare retelling, it was beautiful, it had romance, it had art, it had passion, and I just associate this with sitting with no worry, no care on my swinging bench in the sun and just diving into this. If you're a Much Ado About Nothing fan, if you're a Shakespeare fan, if you're just a fan of books set in other places from where you are right now, this one is set within the middle of an Italian summer, and honestly I just can't recommend it enough. It just felt so calm and peaceful and beautiful. I'm now questioning whether it's actually set in Italy. I'm pretty sure it's Italy. But this basically follows our main character as she is sent to stay with her uncle, I believe he is. It is Italy on the back. It's her uncle that she goes to stay with for the summer, and basically is trying to avoid the path that her parents want to set her on of arranged marriage, and she decides she's going to spend the summer with her uncle, or she doesn't decide that, she gets put there, but she's going to be spending it with art and passion and meeting new people and just deciding what she really wants to do with her life. And there was a real beauty in this, and it just completely summarises the vibes of books I wanted to read during the summer for me. Then we've got Fallen Kingdoms, which you've probably seen me talk about if you've been here for a while. This is by Morgan Rhodes, and this is the first in a fantastic series. I absolutely adore this series. I have read books 1, 2 and 3. Don't think I've read the 4th yet. There's 6 in the series, but I'm trying not to rush through it because I love it. It's kind of a Game of Thronesy with less bulk in it. This is less daunting, I think, but no less exciting, with no less action, and it's just filled with amazing moments and just like, what? It's that kind of rivalry for the throne, for power, for magic. There's forbidden hidden magic. There's so many different characters. There's so many different triangles and circles of character relationships going on, and honestly I just adored this, and I think I will associate this with 2020 because it's the year I discovered this series, and I know a lot of other people have heard me talking about it and have also bought the series and have tagged me in posts and stuff, which is exciting. So I will just associate it with being a real staple fantasy book to bring me through the middle part of this year. Then we've got Two Can Keep a Secret by Karen M. McManus. This is another one I associate with reading in the summer. This follows 2 teens as they go back to their mum's hometown, and everyone seems to have secrets about what's been going on in the hometown from when their mum was a kid, but also now there's been some weird threats going on to do with popular girls and being put on this hit list basically, and saying that one of them's going to be killed, and there's just a hell of a lot going on in this. It's a YA thriller. I wouldn't say this was like anything mind-blowing or anything, but it was fun, and it was a quick YA thriller that I was reading in the evenings in the summer. I feel like most of the happy book memories are in the summer because that's when I read the most. But honestly, this one just took me away because I could just get absorbed into it. I really felt I was there with this book and I really enjoyed it. Now this book is absolutely a favourite. The Unlikely Escape of Uriah Heep by H.G. Parry. This is fantastic. I've spoken about it before. It is just brilliant. It follows our main character whose brother has the ability to bring book characters out of their pages and into the real world. And he's been able to do this since he was a child. No one's really understood how or why, or if anyone else can do it, until suddenly other characters start popping up and there's a threat on the world and the fictional world as well. And oh my god, like, this brings out characters we know. They're not They're fictional characters from our world. They're not fictional for this book, if that makes sense. I think you either have two categories of books about books. Either books that feature books we know, or books that feature books that are made up for the pure purpose of that book. But this features books that we know, such as Matilda, Lion the Witch and the Wardrobe. The whole basis of this is from Copperfield, Charles Dickens. And honestly, loved it, loved it, loved it. It just had such a brilliant way to it. It's all set in New Zealand as well, which is a different type of setting to read about. And I want everyone to read this book because it just felt so good. This was one of the first books I read of the year, so I associate this with like just normality, really, because in January everything was normal. And yeah, for 2020, this kind of set me off thinking I want to read more books like this. And I have read so many books about books in 2020 that this is just one of many brilliant ones to add to my growing pile of books about books. More recently, I finished One by One right at the end of December 2020, and wow, this one I will absolutely associate with the last week of the year. I didn't expect to read another book within the year, so to get this one in there wasn't something I intended necessarily to do. I just thought I would start it and see how I went with it. It's an adult thriller that follows a group of people who are staying in the Alps in a cabin and an avalanche hits, and they are all trapped there and start to be slowly picked off and go missing as the question is raised as to if one of them could be a murderer. This this is such a page turner. If you want a book that is just going to make you keep going and going and going and turning every single page until you run out, this is definitely one. The pure reason I wanted to read this in the winter is because it has snowflakes and snow on the front, and I thought, well, it would be weird not to read it in that kind of condition. And the whole time I was reading this, the weather kept giving warnings that it was going to snow, and it never did. So I felt like I was constantly on edge of thinking, am I going to be able to take a picture of my book in the snow? But for me, I'm going to definitely associate this with the end of Christmas and the New Year's celebrations, because I read it in that middle week, and honestly, adored it. Next up is One True Loves by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Now this one helped me survive 2020 in a different way. This one clawed at something personal that I didn't realise it would, and I'm not going to go into that stage of it because I'm giving you a summary of the book, not of my life history. But basically this is about a woman who, now I haven't had this situation, just to be clear, but one of the very light themes at the end was something that felt far too familiar. This is about a woman who has married the love of her life, everything's going great until he is missing in a helicopter accident and is pretty much presumed dead. Years and years later, she finds another guy and falls in love with him after much deliberation. And then naturally, the first guy, he comes back. Again, I've not experienced that. It's just the element of the end theme. I'm not going into it more, but this was just brilliant and poignant, and it made me cry, and I didn't expect it to. It's a love triangle like I've never read before, and it just hurts your head because it's like, oh my god, what would happen in that kind of situation? Like, how bizarre and terrifying and traumatic and upsetting for that kind of thing to have to happen anyway. But whew, it was really good. It was really good. And Taylor Jenkins Reid, just fantastic. She also writes The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo and Daisy Jones and the Six, and I cannot wait for Malibu Rising this year. Next up, we've got The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue. Of course, this was getting a mention because, again, this helped me get through the year because of the poignant messaging in it, the way that it, again, tapped into something that I have felt personally with one of the things the characters has to go through. But also, this book gave me something that I've never experienced before. This book gave me the potential to have a book boyfriend. I don't have that kind of feeling towards book characters. I don't feel I would look at someone and think, you are my book boyfriend. But Henry in this, if I was forced, is the closest I've ever come to a book boyfriend. So I feel that's an achievement from Addie LaRue. This basically follows a girl who makes a deal with the devil to stay immortal, essentially. She kind of accidentally gets tricked into this deal because she doesn't want to marry somebody and wants to get out of it. So in exchange, the devil basically gets her out of this marriage, but means that no one can ever remember her. And honestly, what a bizarre concept. Like, if you really think about that, it's just, oh, like, what would life be? And that's what this book looks at. It's fantastic, I loved it, but the reason it's in here is because it just felt like it dealt me some poignant stuff that felt things, but it also gave me Henry, and I love Henry. Not enough people talk about Henry. He's a sweet cinnamon bun, and I love him very much. Then we've got A Song of Wraiths and Ruin by Roseanne A. Brown. This is a YA fantasy, and the magic system in this is beautiful because one of the main characters can kind of bring magic to life through storytelling, which I love. This follows a competition in which there's a royal and there's also a guy competing in the competition to try and meet the royal. Essentially, they both need to kill each other. I'm not going to go into massive detail about why because I don't want to spoil it too much, but they need to meet each other and kill each other, and they both have the same goal without knowing it, and it's about him trying to win this competition-ish to get to meet her, and her trying to decide if she can morally kill somebody for the reasons that she needs to. The reason I'm putting this one in here is because I was reading this when I moved into my flat, and I cannot help but associate this with my move and everything that came with it, and this book kept me sane and took me away to a fantasy world in the middle of madness, and for that I cannot thank it enough. Next up we have got The Hobbit, and I'm encompassing the whole of the Lord of the Rings trilogy with this one as well, by J.R.R. Tolkien. This is in here because I read the whole of these books for the first time this year. I've read the first one before, never all of them, and never The Hobbit before. And I did that for the Tolkien Along, which I hosted with Ashley from A Frolic Through Fiction, and wow. Wow. Like, I knew I would love these books, but I also felt worried that I wouldn't somehow. I thought they would be too daunting. And the reason these are in here is purely because I feel like the last part of the year I've been saddling on that Lord of the Rings train, and it's just been affirming my love. And I can't say much more than that really, because there isn't much more to be said, because honestly, these just made me love it even more. And finally, the most poignant book for me, and the best book I've read this year, and the one that really helped me survive the most, is Crescent City's House of Earth and Blood by Sarah J. Maas. It's an urban fantasy. There's so much going on. It's basically a revenge story, or redemption story, of a girl trying to avenge something awful that has happened to somebody close to her. I don't want to give spoilers. I don't want to say more than that. There's epic sacrifices, there's romance, there's sauciness, there's battles, there's magic, there's so much. But ultimately, I read this book in February. I started it on a spa day with my mum for her birthday, just before the pandemic was really a big thing, and probably weeks before it was suddenly in the news that, like, okay, this is going to happen, we're going to lock down. And for me, I associate this with that calm and that feeling of like normality, without even realizing that we were going to need to appreciate normality. And I will always remember that feeling and associate with this book. And I need to reread it because it's just so much. There's so much in here to escape to, and I absolutely bloody loved it. Those are all the books that helped me get through 2020. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. If you did enjoy, please give it a thumbs up. Comment down below what books helped you get through 2020, and you can subscribe to see more of my face on your feed. Keep smiling, stay positive, and I hope you have a fantastic year ahead.